Boston Sports Nuts, another exciting episode. I'm Jim Russo, along with my good friends Paul Izzo.
Good to be here, Jim, as usual. Happy New Year. Oh, no, wait a minute. Larry David said after 3 days you shouldn't say Happy New Year.
Yeah. Okay, then I'm not going to say it.
Okay, sorry about that.
And my other good friend, Ken Berman.
Hey, yeah, curb your enthusiasm, will you, Paul? Good to be here, guys, as always. Looking to have some fun, talking some sports with you, too.
Can you believe it's 2025?
Well,
Not really. Okay, the dominant sports story, obviously, is...
Down to business, Paul.
Yeah, we got
down to business.
So we got to get down. No, not shut up. But we got to get down to business because the dominant sports story, obviously, is the New England Patriots winning the last game of the regular season and then firing the head coach, Jerod Mayo. Paul, take it away.
Credit to Mr. Kraft for making a decision that I think every reasonable observer of the Patriots and the NFL in general believes had to be made. I was on record on this program of thinking he wasn't going to do it. I thought that it was just too soon.
Agreed with you.
But whether it was Mayo coaching to win the last game or just the general decline in the performance of the team, which was the reason Kraft cited, Kraft decided to make the decision. I think it was a bit of a half measure because I think there are larger problems with the franchise that go much greater than the fact that their head coach is not really qualified for the job. But I'm glad he made the move, and it'll be very interesting over the next week is one of the most important weeks in the recent history of the franchise. It really is, because despite the fact that they didn't lose the game and allow themselves to pile up some draft capital, they do have a good draft pick at number 4.
Yep.
And as a result, they should be able to land some talent. They have some money to spend, and they got to get this offseason right. They got to get it right. And
crucial.
I have a few more thoughts about it, but I want to get your guys' take just in general on the
I was
Ken Berman.
I was surprised that he did let Mayo go. I was happy, surprised, because I was with you. I didn't think he would do it, even though it was the right move, because he does seem to really like that guy, and he seems to, really care about him, and you could tell by some of his pressers that it hurt him a little bit to do this, and but it's the right move because it's a mess. Now, some things I heard in the last couple of days as more stuff comes out. Everybody on his staff was a first-timer. Offense coordinator, defensive coordinator, him, linebacker coach, receivers coach, every major, most important coaches were all doing it for the first time that position.
And Elliott Wolf's first time to be in charge of personnel.
Being first time being in charge. And you could see it, right? Could we not see it? They weren't in control. They weren't getting better. It just never seemed like Mayo had a grasp on the position. Maybe, like Bob Kraft said, maybe someday he'll be a great head coach after he goes and gets experience somewhere else. But they couldn't risk keeping him here another year and letting this keep going on the way it was.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I have some different takes on this.
We love different takes, Jim.
Okay, one.
Are they going to make me look bad because I didn't have those takes?
I don't think so.
All right.
Why would they make you look bad?
Because I didn't think of them.
You may have thought of them. You just may not have said them. So, one, this firing is, an example of the series, as someone wrote, of bad decisions that the Krafts have made, which, started with Belichick over Brady. No NBA team would have done that. I'm not saying I would have done differently, but no NBA team would have done that, the coach over the player. Allowing Matt Patricia to be the offensive coordinator, the de facto coordinator.
Joe Judge, the quarterback's coach.
Yeah, hiring Mayo with no search. And to this day, they still have no Brad Stevens, Craig Breslow, Don Sweeney type. I heard the name Alonzo Highsmith the other day will be involved in picking the next coach. So I still ask, who is in charge at Foxborough Place or whatever they call it. So the second angle I have, which I haven't heard too much, is we know the Crafts are very PR conscious over the years, and this goes back to when the dynasty started. When it was reported the Crafts were not happy that the Red Sox were still the dominant team. That seemed to fade after the Red Sox finally climbed the mountain in 2004. So I think the Mayo firing, while certainly justified, also did some PR moves. One, pushed all the other teams once again in Boston to the background. This is all anybody's going to talk about.
Winter.
Right. Who
Draft
are they going to
picks.
hire?
Who they drafting?
Who are the coordinators going to be? Who are this going to be? Who's that going to be? So the Celtics, who are sitting with a 780 or whatever it is winning percentage. The Bruins have just lost 5 in a row. And the Red Sox, who,
Who are they?
We don't know. Are not, once again pushed to the background. But the biggest thing to me about the PR of this is this overshadows one of the most disastrous things that has happened to the Patriots in years, which is winning that football game. I was very adamant. I watched our show. I was amazed how adamant I was for right or wrong about they had to lose that game.
We love Adam in the
Now,
nation.
let's think about what they've lost. You lose that game. You can trade that pick. Look at what this 49ers
Wait a minute,
got.
if they lose that game, they got the
Then they
number
got the
one
number one
overall pick.
And the 49ers were able to trade 2. I mean, they traded for Trey Lance. They gave up a couple of number ones, other players. So let's say the Patriots, at minimum, got back 2 number ones, a second round, and a player. That's 4 players. That means they're down 3 when they pick at 4. They're down 3 players. I'm sorry, that is a significant loss. And why did they win that game? I think a couple of reasons. One, when Joe Milton got hot, I understand you don't want to take him out because you don't want to embarrass Brissett. It's the play calling. You don't have him throw the ball. You run the ball on 3rd and 10. Come on. I told last week, look at the NBA. Players don't tank games. Management and coaches do. And they refuse to do it. They both say they never talked about it. Maybe they're afraid of the Flory suit, as Paul pointed out last week. But it had to be understood. That play calling was horrendous last week. And number 2, why is Antonio Gibson, who's arguably the best running back, playing in the 4th quarter of that game? I'm sorry. This is a major disaster, and it's all covered up because they fired Jerod Mayo. For the first time, I watched almost the whole Inside Edition last night in maybe 2 years, and they never mentioned losing that game. Mission accomplished.
Well,
Patriots.
it was, Jim, losing that game, they won the game.
You know what I mean.
I do, but you're not the first person to make that mistake of saying losing that game
Right,
when you
yeah.
actually mean winning that game.
Yeah, okay.
Because winning that game was losing that game.
Yep.
I agree with you. Here's the problem. I think Jerod Mayo knew he was getting fired. I do. And I think he stuck it to the Patriots by trying to win that game. Because you can't be that stupid. It's impossible. Nobody thought that it was a good idea to win that game.
No.
That whole thing about, well, when I'm out on the field, I try to win the game. Okay, you can say that, but you have to try to lose the game.
Right.
And the fact that he didn't know that or didn't care has to mean, because I refuse to believe that a well-educated man who was smart enough to be an NFL coach and work for Putnam Investments didn't know that it was in the team's interest to lose that game. Correct. I refuse to believe that. I think it either had to be spite or he was not nearly as smart as I thought he was.
Then they had to do what you suggested on this program, either before or after my rant, that they get rid of Mayo during the week.
That was the mistake.
Right,
You said that.
exactly. You
Because
said it.
because the management can't tell Mayo to lose the game. They cannot do that.
No.
If they turn around and say that, if they say that and turn around and fire him, he will absolutely go public with that. They could not take that risk. So what they did was they kept their fingers crossed and assumed that he knew that his job was to lose that game, and he didn't.
But if you, like you said, if he had already figured out that he was getting fired, then he's not going to play that game with them. And he's going to do whatever he wants to do. Hey, Milton was 22 of 20. He threw 29 passes, like Jim said. That's ridiculous.
No, Milton played that game like they were going to make the playoffs.
Right.
Which he should have. It's his first game. He's a rookie. I've said it. I'll repeat it. Players won't tank. You can't ask them to do it.
No.
But Joe Milton has now made himself, general managers around the league, they're not sold on a game against backups against the Bills. Don't get me wrong, but it's causing them to think, hey, maybe that guy's something, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Maybe
I
he
want to
could-
get to him later.
It is to Joe Milton's advantage to do that, which we said on this program would happen with players, whether they're playing for contracts or what. So it has to be management and the coach. And I'll go back to Paul's point. If they had any doubt that Jerod Mayo wasn't on the same page, then they should have got rid of him before. And by the way, they don't even have to hire one of his assistants. They could have had somebody in the front office to coach one game who knew what to do. Yeah. And it was the play calling in that game. Once he got hot, hand off to that running back from the practice squad. Do not play Antonio Gibson, who arguably was their number one running back.
Yeah, I don't understand why. I mean, even Buffalo went to like the I don't know what number he was.
No, they had the third string quarterback.
And you
Trubisky was out of the game.
also had to know it doesn't take rocket science. And again, I hate to keep saying we said something, but you said it on this program. Buffalo had no interest in winning that game.
None.
They were locked at 2, which I said. And hey, if it's close, maybe they think, hey, we got a division rival.
Paul, what'd you say about Buffalo?
No, I'm just saying it. We can knock it down to 4 from 1 if we don't win. So, you know, this game was like, hey, most games 2 teams try to win, okay? One team wins. One team has to win. They have to outplay the other, right? Outcoach the other. This game, one team should have really wanted to lose, and the other team was saying, not a big deal if we lose. Maybe we even benefit. You've got to out-lose them. All right? I know it sounds crazy, but the future of the franchise is at stake. What are you doing?
Okay, so I'm gonna not disagree with you, but I'm gonna throw a little bit of a response. When I left the stadium, I wasn't as crestfallen about winning as I might have been for 2 reasons. Number one, I think it's partially led to the firing of Jerod Mayo, which is a move that I'm in favor of. It was beyond dumb to go all out to win that game. He didn't go all out to win the game. Leaving May in would have been going all out. But they did enough to win the game, which I don't think helped Mayo's cause. The other thing is, and we don't have to go off the subject, but I'm going to go off the subject. I think Joe Milton can play, and let me tell you why. A lot of people are saying, well, he was up against third stringers. Okay, but you got to make the throws. And he made the throws. He made, according to some folks that I've read online, and don't ask me the names, go on Twitter yourself, you'll find them, some of the best NFL throws of the season by any quarterback. The one that was called back, where he scrambled for 10 seconds late in the game and threw an absolute dart to a player standing in the end zone at the pylon, was as fine a throw as anybody has made in Gillette in the last 5 years. The scramble that led to the 40-yard pass to Booty was a phenomenal play. He made the throws. Now, if the fact that he played against inferior competition should be taken into account, but he scrambled and he made the throws.
He also had a lot of time that May has not had this year in a lot of those plays.
Yeah, he did.
Look.
No, so let me just finish. So that's an asset that we now think we have that we might not have known we had.
We knew that after the first 2 drives. That's my point. He led them 2 drives, looked great. Okay, we got a player. And by the way, scouts now know it. The other GMs now know it. He threw well. What did he get, 13 in a row?
Yeah.
To start.
I knew that at halftime, that this kid can play. I know it. And what were they up? 3 points at that point?
They were up at the half, but then they fell behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, you fell behind.
Stay behind.
I already know the kid can play. I know you don't want to embarrass Brissett. Hand the ball off to the taxi squad running back. Sorry, no excuse.
Okay, to one point to add to what you're saying is People say, well, you can't make a mockery of the game. Okay, what did the Kansas City Chiefs do?
Right.
Everybody loves the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Andy Reid. Everybody loves that franchise. It's the gold standard.
Right.
Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
They tanked on a level that hasn't been seen in years. They put up no fight against Denver.
Nothing. Didn't
and
even
there's an
try.
old tradition in sports, which is when you have a meaningless game, you don't tank when you play a team that has a meaningful game.
That's long gone.
Well, they should have at
long
least
gone.
tried to put up something of a fight, because it goes back to Belichick losing that game back in the early 2000s to improve his seeding. Kansas City didn't want to play Cincinnati, so they let Denver win.
See, I disagree with that. The only way Kansas City would have played Cincinnati is if Cincinnati, if they had beaten Denver and then Cincinnati went to Buffalo and beat Buffalo. That's the only way Kansas City could have beat Cincinnati. That's a tough game for Cincinnati to win. I think Reed just said...
Well, Cincinnati didn't get in because Denver won,
right,
correct?
but they would have been the 7. The Chiefs have a bye. 7 plays 2.
You don't think that helped motivate
Which
Kansas
is
City?
Buffalo? No. I just think we're 15-1. We're done. We're just resting everybody.
Okay, but they tanked. They didn't try to win the game.
I agree, because they said that.
So you and I only disagree on the margins,
Right.
which is why did they
Yeah,
tank.
right.
What I'm saying is that a gold standard team
We agree 100%.
that
on
we're all supposed to look up to tanked. So if the Patriots had, quote, tanked, who would have taken issue with it? Everybody
Right.
would have said, no, I was smart.
Right.
You know, and by the way, you can tank without tanking, as you said.
Yeah.
You hand it off. You throw little dump passes.
Right.
3rd and 11. You don't try to make the first
Right.
down.
Right.
And you're right about Kansas City, because they said, we're done. Our season's done. Number 1 seed. Mahomes hurt his ankle. We're done.
Can I tell
And
you-
by the way, one more point, because Paul, this is right up your alley. Vegas had Denver as a double-digit favorite, I believe. Everybody knew it, which goes to your point again. They're the gold standard. Everybody knew before the game that game was over. Sorry.
Yeah, my opinion on this is if the Patriots had done that during their good years and lost to a team 38-0, there would have been an investigation. They would have lost a first-round draft pick. They would have been fined $500,000. Belichick would have been, crucified by everybody that he threw a game when somebody else was needed it to get.
That's a funny take. Yeah, I agree.
I totally believe that. Like they would have just said, "Oh my God, we got to look into this." They didn't even try. We're gonna fine
All right,
them.
Ken, since you just had the great take, let's pivot a little bit. Where do we go now? Who's the next coach? Do we do anything
All
in
right,
the front
can,
office?
Can I address that?
You want to
we're
go
late.
first?
Go.
Yeah,
Okay,
Paul.
go ahead.
I just want to say that the larger problem, and this was in my opening take, remains unaddressed, which is, and no disrespect to anybody, whether it's Big Bob, Jonathan, Robin Glazer, you hear all these names. The Patriots don't have football leadership. They don't. They have great businessmen and women at the top. I think one of the things is they had a very strong personality in Bill Parcells, who basically ran the team. He claims that near the end of his tenure, the Crafts butted in a little bit to, quote, shop for the groceries and took a little bit of his power away. Kraft said, and this history is important to understand what's going on now. As a former history teacher, I tell you, to understand what's going on now, you got to understand what went on then. What the problem in the 90s was, Parcells kept saying, I want to go year to year to year. And Kraft would say, well, if you want to go year to year to year, I need to have somebody in place who's involved in personnel decisions. And they began to insert themselves into Parcells' decisions. Somebody other than Parcells wanted Terry Glenn.
Right.
They took Terry Glenn, which turned out to be a pretty good draft pick, actually, in the first round. And then Bobby Greer, when Parcells left, became the personnel guy with Pete Carroll. Bill Belichick comes along. Greer overlaps for a short amount of time with Belichick. Belichick eventually assumes control. What the Patriots never figured out was, what's the post-Belichick football leadership?
Right.
Like, who was in
Who's
charge?
in right?
The last 5 years, who was in charge of the New England Patriots? Bill Belichick. Okay. He was the football leadership. Well, the last year under Jerod Mayo, where was the football leadership? Where is it now? You don't have a John Elway. You don't have somebody at the top who runs the organization,
as I said,
who's worn
their
pads
Brad
and a helmet.
Stevens?
Yeah.
Who's their Brad Stevens?
Right.
And I think that's, as much as I'm happy that they're looking at new coaches, because I think the guy on the field and in the locker room is very important, the guy that strategizes and scouts and all that's important, I think you need to have football leadership. That's just me.
I agree.
The Red Sox had Larry Lucchino, who, I think he never played after college, but he had a huge background with the Orioles and all these other teams. The Celtics had Brad Stevens, a very accomplished a college basketball player, college coach, professional coach. Now he's running the team. The Denver Broncos had John Elway many years. Football guys, basketball guys. I don't know that the Patriots have football leadership.
Well,
and I think that's something they need to go back to. And the Crafts need to step aside and say, it's fun to be an owner, but I remember you gave me grief a long time ago. Because
I can't believe
I
that.
loved he slammed me, and it was funny. I said, geez, if I was owner, I would trust my GM to run the team, and I would never butt in. And you were like, well, you're the last person that would not butt in.
I remember that, but
But
I believe you.
But it was so funny because it's true. I would butt in.
Yeah.
But you do need somebody who.
That's funny.
You do need somebody who can run the football
So
operation.
Ken,
Well,
where
Jim,
did they go?
you've raised the question, Jim, so they're going to hire a head coach again, but not a general manager who they hire first, and then he hires his head coach, who then gets to hire his assistants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I've been hearing and trying to look into this a little bit. What I'm finding out is they don't. They think because Elliott Wolf and that staff have been at it for the last year at looking at college personnel, scouting, who they want to talk to, film study, all that work they've done. Some of the experts I hear on the radio and TV have said they really have to keep him in place until May
It makes sense.
because their contract. So I also learned that head coaches' contracts are up in January, and GM contracts and front office people are up in May. So they're saying they got to stay where they are right now because that's where all the work has been done. And, they need that info to go forward. But I'm totally with you guys. I want a Brad Stevens type of guy at the very top that everybody else is under.
Who's the face of the New England Patriots?
Right, exactly. Bill Belichick was.
Right.
And by the way, he did a heck of a job. Let's admit it, right? He had the last few years were rough, but he was what I always liked about Belichick, besides his press conferences, which I hated actually, but he seemed in control and in command. I don't see anybody in command, especially the head coach this year.
If Elliott Wolf is so good, why not make him that person? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Kraft family correctly believes that if they go after a big-time coach like Mike Vrabel, it's going to be his call who the GM is. He's not going to come in and go, well, I'm not that crazy about Elliott Wolf, but I guess I'll make it work. That's not happening. Right. In order for him to be successful, he has to be 100% okay with the scouting, the player development, the film guys, the GM, the player acquisition people. He needs to know who has final say. They might get a Ben Johnson. They might get a Brian Flores who doesn't have that level of control, but they're not going to get Mike Vrabel. Chicago's not going to get Pete Carroll. These big names that are out there are not going to join a team, in my opinion, without total control. So if the goal is to land Mike Vrabel, and that's what we're all reading and hearing, I'm not 100% sure it's going to happen, but let's assume that it does happen. There's not a chance in hell that Vrabel's coming in without being satisfied with the GM. That's an impossibility.
So who is going to be let's start with the coach then, since they're starting with the coach. Who is going to be the next coach?
Well, we don't know.
Right.
I think there's only two potential landing spots for Vrabel. One is New England and the other is the Raiders. And I think New England gets the slight edge because of the stability of the ownership, the facility, the fact that it has a legit fan base. It's not tourists and gamblers. The fact that it's got a more recent history of success. He's familiar with it. the Krafts. I mean, Vrabel was on record during his last season with Tennessee, coming to Foxborough in the bye week and saying, "This place is unusual. It's not like this everywhere else. Believe me," which was an obvious shot at where he was at that time. So I just think that I think it's 60-40 that he lands in New England.
Yeah.
I think that the Patriots' edge with Mike Vrabel is one guy, Drake May. I heard Burt Berea last night say he saw something in the Athletic, Vrabel's 3 qualifications, and one of them was ownership, another was the quarterback. I think it's Drake May. The Raiders don't have Drake May.
No.
The Raiders actually won a game they shouldn't have won down the stretch. And they're not in the top 2, so they're not going to get Sanders. They're not going to get Ward, maybe, unless something happens. They could trade up, I guess. So the question that Vrabel will have probably with his interview with the Raiders is going to be, what is your plan to get a quarterback? With the Patriots, he may have 2, but let's just say, for argument's sake, he's only got 1. He's got Drake May, and he's got the 4th pick, so he can start to rebuild the team.
Yeah.
So I think the Pats have a slight edge against Brady and Richard Seymour.
Which raises, can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Which raises another interesting point. I just thought of it. Imagine you're offering Mike Vrabel 3 number 1 picks. Wouldn't that make it more likely that he would come here? That's another problem with losing that game.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
absolutely. Yeah.
you're right. You could offer him 3 number 1s, and you could also say, hey, Mike, you can make the trade. So go get what you want. You can trade that.
What a
number
lost
1.
opportunity.
You can trade that number 1 pick, Mike. And if you want to get offensive linemen, if you want picks, if you want a receiver, do what you want.
But I mean, believe it or not, from what I heard, the Raiders are a bigger mess than we are, and nobody enjoys working with the owner. And like you said, they're now in Vegas. And he has, listen, he had great years at New England, Mike Vrabel. I'm going higher than you. I'm going 70-30. He ends up here. And by the way, in the sport of football, in the National Football League, it seems like the head coach really has a lot of power with
Depends
everything.
on the franchise, Ken.
Yeah.
It really does.
But if you're a head coach of an NFL football team, you must have a lot of input into who you're drafting. Because to me, that would be the most important thing that I'd want to be involved with is who am I drafting for this football team?
The only thing I'm going to say about the NFL draft, and this is such a banal example, but it's the only one I can think of, I'm in a fairly big money fantasy football league, and I agonize over the picks. I can only imagine what it must be like to be sitting there, and this scout is saying, this is the best offensive tackle on the board. This guy has worked all winter on that wide receiver that this guy doesn't like, and the owner is whispering in your ear, we really need a running back to sell tickets. That's tough. And then when you make your pick, you don't pick for 32 more picks.
Right.
Yeah, that's why Elliott Wolf's father famously said this is a 1 out of 3 thing in the draft. Good point. I'll go with Vrabel's going to be the coach. For
Odds?
I think I'll go with Ken. 70 because I think there's one other factor. I do think the Krafts are PR conscious. Can't say as I blame them for that. I mean, they're running a business where they need to sell tickets, need to sell, rights. I think they're going to give him a huge offer. I really do. I don't think anybody's going to outbid the Pats on this one.
His interview is Thursday, January
it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Well, we're
filming Wednesday.
What's today? Wednesday the 8th.
Yeah.
Well, we may already know by the time all you thousands.
I think they're going to give him
I don't think he leaves Gillette without a contract.
I wouldn't. That wouldn't surprise me at all because I think the Pats, if you throw in the PR factor, right now it's pretty negative, and Vrabel's hiring turns that around. And I think they're going to overwhelm him.
If I'm Vrabel's agent, I say to him, you under no circumstances do you sign on Thursday.
I agree with you.
You go take that other meeting because whatever the Patriots throw at him, you want to walk into Las Vegas and say, they just offered me $18 million a year for 5 years.
But
I understand
and Brady
that,
will top it.
But I still don't think he leaves Gillette without a contract.
But here's the thing, Ken. I think Vrabel has all the cards here
He does.
because he'll say, "No, I want to go talk to the Raiders." and I want to go talk to Tom and Richard because they're on the committee. And that's
Richard
going to
Seymour.
Richard
Yeah.
Seymour. And that's going to worry the Crafts. They know Tom Brady. They know Richard Seymour. I think what he does is he might walk away, take the meeting with the Raiders. Raiders might top the offer, go back to the Crafts and say, match this and I'm in.
Yeah.
So,
He's-
one other
fascinating
name
story.
I just want to mention, I don't think he probably should be the head coach, but Liam Cohen, who has worked under Sean McVay and had an outstanding year as the offensive coordinator at Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield, is a 38-year-old, I believe, graduate of LaSalle Academy in Providence, Rhode
It
Island,
just happens to be Jim Russo's
where
alma
I
mater.
went
Yeah,
to
with
school.
Jim
He
went
was
to-
their starting quarterback, and I believe he was All-State. I don't think he'll get the job, but if Vrabel doesn't take it, he would be worth an interview.
Well, he's getting mentioned in a lot of openings.
Yeah.
The names being
He's
thrown
very
around,
highly
he's one of the
regarded.
top 6 or 7 names being
Yep.
thrown around, along with Pete Carroll and a few other names.
So in the time we have left, we're going to do a Celtics recap half-year show, but we're going to talk about the Celtics on this one recent road trip, where the media correctly identified it as a very difficult trip.
Wait, can I interrupt for 1 second? Before we get to that, can I just say that I think with the right people in charge and high picks again and all the money they got to spend, they can get good again quicker than we all think. Okay, sorry, Jim.
All right, let's be positive. They played Minnesota, Houston, Oklahoma City, and then Denver. They went 3-1. They were ahead in the one game they lost at halftime by 10, I believe, and then totally collapsed, scored 27 points. An ironic thing, speaking of LaSalle
that bad?
Academy, last night, we're taping the show on a Wednesday, Tuesday night in Denver, which they won. Brendan Malone, I believe, coached at Bishop Hendricken in Warwick, Rhode Island, and guess who was a star player for Bishop Hendricken High School?
Joe Mazzulla?
Joe Mazzulla. So anyway, Ken, let's go to you. What did you think of the road trip overall?
Hey, I'm really happy with a 3-1 road trip. I was afraid they were going to go 0-4 the way they came out of December. So I was not optimistic. I was just nervous, actually, because they just weren't playing well. They weren't on their game. They had just gone 8-6, I believe, in December, 2-4 at home or 3-4 at home, something like that. They just weren't playing well, and they were going out and playing 4 tough teams: Minnesota, Houston, OKC, and Denver. And Minnesota and Houston are both sort of physical. Beat you up a little bit. They're playing good defense. Ime Udoka we've seen him coach. We know what he likes to do. But that 2-0 start was great. They had one bad half of basketball against OKC. That's where, and okay, so they scored 27 points total for the second half of the game. 65 in the first half, 27. They were 2 for 24 from the three-point arc in the second half. They were 9 for 46 for the game. I think we talked, all of us, and I kept saying there's got to be an alternative plan when they're not going in. Because that's what worries me about them. When they don't go in, they don't ever say, let's do something different. We'll just keep chucking them. Last night against Denver, I know Jokic was out, but Denver leads the league in the lane or in the paint scoring. But because of Jokic,
There was no paint.
there was no paint. They used to paint it. But last night, the Celtics scored 60 points in the lane. 60. Okay? High percentage shots. Closer to the basket, I will still say to the day I go to my grave, is a higher percentage than a shot further away. And they did something that I've been begging them to do for a while. They ran like 3 or 4 picture-perfect fast breaks and got layups out of them. Really? Boy, that's... you make the game easier for yourself when you do that. You know, when you get easy baskets, you make the game easier. And that's what they did. So 3-1, I'm thrilled with 3-1.
I thought it was an outstanding road trip. The problem with watching this, when the Celtics are very good like they are right now, we watch every game. We watch every minute. When you watch every game and you watch every minute, one has a tendency to maybe focus on the negative a little bit when they have their defensive lapses, or they take too many threes, or they go cold from three, or they seem to lose their energy. It's very difficult to win in the NBA on the road. I know we joke about the road court advantage, but the statistics bear it out. It's not that easy to win on the road. To go 3-1 against 4 pretty decent opponents, including 2 that might come out of the West as the best team in the West. Denver one night, Oklahoma another night, another decent team in Houston. That's a pretty impressive road trip. It's interesting. I thought you were going to point out that in the third game that they lost, you were hoping to do something other than chucking up threes. I think we saw that in the fourth game at Denver.
Oh, yeah, that's what, yeah.
Which was an adjustment to the opponent. Let's play a different game.
Yep.
They went too big almost all night. They had Cornette with Horford, and Horford with
Porzingis.
and Porzingis with Cornette. You know, they and then they had Cater in there. They and some of it didn't work, but a lot of it did. And I thought it was a terrific win, even without Jokic. Hey, look, you play who they play. You play the opponent that they put on the court.
No question. In the NBA, we've seen the Celtics lose to teams without their stars.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And even Scal said last night, a lot of times when the star's not in the game, the rest of the guys rise to the occasion, especially when they're at home. So I thought it was a very impressive road trip. Very impressive.
I've always said, when the stars aren't in the game, some other guys are going to get more shots, and those guys can play. So we saw that last night with a couple of Denver players. And the other thing about beating Denver without Jokic, last night also, the Lakers went to Dallas, who was playing without Doncic and Irving, and they had Davis and
Great
James
example.
And lost.
Yeah.
They lost. So it does happen. So I wouldn't discount that win, as you guys said. I think there were positives from the road trip, and I think there were a few negatives. I think we're seeing a trend on how to beat the Celtics now, which we'll get into more in our other show. But Oklahoma City, Houston, as you said, didn't work in Houston. But I think, one, the word's out, be physical with the Celtics. The Celtics overcame that last night. Now, Denver isn't as physical as the other teams they played. But I think Missoula in the first game came up with a defensive game plan to stop Anthony Edwards. To do that, he had to give up a ton of threes. It worked. They did give up a lot of threes, but they won anyway. It worked. They held them to 15 points. And I think you told me he got 50 his next game, right?
Yeah, and lost. Yeah.
Okay. Against Houston, they overwhelmed them. They played one bad half against OKC, and they didn't respond to the increased physicality. And in Denver, I think my impression of that game was the Celtics were trying to determine a level, and not consciously, but how hard do we got to play to win this game? And it ended up working because they turned it on. They flipped the switch, and that's really hard to do. I remember when Bob Cousy did color, he used to say, if the Celtics play 5 minutes of defense right now, they're going to win this game.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
And they did that. They went on a 15-0
exactly what
run.
they did last night,
Yeah.
and they pulled it off, so credit to them. I think that the other encouraging thing last night to me was an increased focus on Kristaps Porzingis, who admitted after the game he hasn't been fully healthy. He's just starting. But they made a conscious effort to get him the ball, and in the low post. And the last thing I'll be positive about is last night I've said, as we had this discussion, was I'm not worried about the number of threes. I'm worried about the quality of threes. And against OKC, they were not good threes. And last night, as Paul said, I think they clearly made an adjustment. They said, well, if we're going to get these terrible threes, we're going to make them pay. And Scal put it this way: if they're not going to double, Brown's going to the basket. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think credit to them that they adjusted. So largely, I agree with you guys. Very encouraging trip.
Well, with Jokic out, I mean, he's their middle guy on defense too. You know what I mean? Like, if he's out, you got to take advantage of him being out down low.
Changes the whole game. His numbers are ridiculous. He's leading the league in 3-point shooting percentage now.
Right.
The MVP conversation, over. Done.
Well, SGA is in it.
The conversation is who's second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right.
All right. Before we wrap it up, unless you guys got anything else on, I know that Ken Berman told me before the show he wanted to mention something about the Boston Bruins.
Oh. You know, it's interesting. They went on a nice little streak. I think Paul had mentioned. Did anybody notice they were 7th in the league in points or something like that?
Yeah.
They've now lost 5 in a row.
They're a mess.
And they were shut out last
They were
night.
shut out at home last night. You shouldn't lose 5 in a row when you supposedly have Swayman as a goaltender on your team.
And I guess, what did you call? Well, you quoted someone who said the new coach high or something like that. I guess that's over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That. I mean, he had a nice little run, but boy, losing 5 in a row in the NHL is not easy.
No.
I mean, puck luck, hits a skate. As we know, we've watched a million games, but they're in trouble there.
Well, my quick take on the Bruins is, for whatever reason, they've managed to fool the fans into thinking that the 2011 team is still there.
Yeah, right.
It's actually only one guy.
Right, yeah.
Really.
Marchand's
Right?
the only guy left.
What would Rick Pitino say if he was the coach of the Bruins? He'd say,
They're not
Zdeno
walking through
Chara's
that.
not walking through that door. Savard's not walking through that door. All
Bork
the
is
goalies. All those guys that were around for the 11 championship, the 2013 Stanley Cup final, except one, are gone.
Who's like 40 now.
And they've managed to remain competitive, but it looks like the wheels have come off a little bit.
Yeah.
And I always feel bad. I'm not a huge hockey fan. I always feel badly when the Bruins don't do well because their fans are so loyal.
The best of the best.
It's really tough
Right.
for Bruins fans when they suck, which they do right now.
Yeah.
And, I
They are
don't
the-
ask me what they have to do.
I know. They are the most.
I don't know.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Before we
Yep. Oh, go ahead.
go, Jim, can I just
Sure.
get one thing off my chest?
I thought that was it.
No, I guess there's another one.
I got it.
There's another one.
Okay, for how many years on Sports Nuts did I every year go on about Major League Baseball having 2 different sets of rules? DH in the American League, no DH in the National League, but they played each other all year long.
Right.
There couldn't have been a stupider thing in the history of professional sports, in my mind. Okay? Well, I think the NFL is coming real close. An odd number of games. You cannot have an odd number of games. Every team needs to play X amount on the road and X amount at home. It has to be fair. You cannot have one team in your division getting an extra home game, and you don't have that home game. I don't care if there's home field advantage, or as we say, there's road field advantage now all the time. This is, to me, complete stupidity once again by a professional sport. Either play 16 or 18. I don't care. I'd rather it be 16, but if it's going to be 18, just get there and have everybody play under the same rules.
Well, we already know it's not going to be next year because they already announced the schedule for next year.
I know. It's stupider in my mind. Just ridiculous that they keep putting
What
this
would
up.
Sergeant Carter say? Dumb, stupid, and ridiculous.
Yeah, this is...
On that note,
Yeah,
Speaking of dumb, stupid, and ridiculous.
It's been like stewing in me for a while.
Which one of us is dumb? Which one is stupid? And which one is ridiculous?
on that note, from Sergeant Carter of Goma
Vince
Pile.
Carter.
Vince Carter, yes, of Goma Pile fan for you younger fans. That's it for this week's edition of Boston Sports Nuts. For Paul Izzo, Ken Berman, I'm Jim Russo. Have a great day.
Golly. Shazam.
He was great.
Thank you for watching Boston Sports Nuts. You can find all of our episodes available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. For more information, go to westwoodmediacenter.tv or follow Boston Sports Nuts on Facebook, Instagram, and X.